It was as if I heard the voice of God, and I wouldn't say I did hear the voice of God, but it was close to a kind of vision. It was as if a voice was saying to me, I love your projects and your plays and your theatre companies and your directing and the programs you've made. I love all that. I bless all that. But what about my people? What about my sons and daughters? What about my children on the front line? What about those who are suffering? Who's going to do anything for them? In the early 1990s, there was a conference held in Malvern, called by the Bishop of Malvern, and it was 50 years on from a wartime conference. So in the war, and I think it was 1942, there was a gathering of people in Malvern, called by the then Bishop of Malvern, that included T.S. Eliot, Dorothy Sayers, great writers, and Archbishop William Temple, for example, a number of key figures culturally. I don't know the long list, but it was a remarkable gathering looking at the survival of civilization beyond the Nazis, beyond the darkest days of the war. It was a hopeful and a prophetic kind of gathering. The Bishop of Malvern in the early 90s called this anniversary conference, and there were many notable people there. Edward Heath, for example, the former Prime Minister. I'm pretty sure Roy Jenkins was there, another politician, possibly Shirley Williams, but there were certainly a lot of leading political figures, people who were contributing a lot to society. I found myself invited to this conference. By this time, I'd written a lot of plays, founded theatre companies, and I was working for the BBC. And yeah, there were various reasons why I might be a sort of typical person, artistic person, to be invited to such a gathering, which is essentially a gathering of people with faith, but also who cared about civilization and society and culture. But what was striking to me at this conference was that I was one of very, very few people in the creative arts there. And it troubled me because I thought of the brilliant original luminaries of the wartime conference. And I thought, gosh, I mean, where is the T.S. Eliot and where is the Dorothy Sayers? Interestingly, one of the only other creative people that I can remember meeting there was Giles, the cartoonist. Very famous cartoonist, and we used to buy the Christmas annual of all Giles's cartoons every year in my childhood, and I was very honoured to meet him. He was a lovely man. But I drove away from this conference. I mean, I said a few things that people really appreciated in plenary sessions, and I sort of made a point about the vital role of the arts in society, and I said, if church and society don't come to terms with this role of arts and media. And this is, by the way, before the internet, and this is before a lot of the extraordinary developments in media of recent years. But I said, if the church above all doesn't come to terms with this, it will fail, full stop. And anyway, people listened to my impassioned pleas, but I got in my car rather disconsolately and I drove back to Cardiff, to the world where I lived. And I kept thinking of all the artists, the writers and the dancers, the architects, the poets, the actors that I knew. And I kept thinking, oh, he should have been at this conference, or she should have been there, or why wasn't he invited? But the more I thought of all these people I knew, and I knew a great many, I began to realize how much trouble they were in. I kept thinking of all these individuals. And oh, yeah, she's got major relationship problems at the moment, and he's gone bankrupt, or she's suffered a lot of illness and stress and mental health troubles with her art and her survival. And the more I thought of all these people, the more wounded people I saw, the more brilliantly creative but vulnerable people. I saw like a long list stretching out in front of me as I drove literally towards the setting sun. And then I thought, and it was quite a profound moment, it was like an epiphany. It was as if I heard the voice of God, and I wouldn't say I did hear the voice of God, but it was close to a kind of vision. It was as if a voice was saying to me, I love your projects and your plays and your theatre companies and your directing and the programs you've made. I love all that. I bless all that. But what about my people? What about my sons and daughters? What about my children on the front line? What about those who are suffering? Who's going to do anything for them? And yeah, I mean, there are famous quotes from the Bible where, I think it's the story of Samuel where the little boy has to say sort of, here am I, or I think in some other case in the Bible, here am I, send me. I knew that voice was speaking to me, and I knew it was a charge upon my life. And that led to the idea of a charitable vision that came to have the name Wayfarer. But I spent a couple of years thinking about this deeply, not doing anything, letting it marinate, which is something I do sometimes. I don't act impulsively. I just thought, let's test this out. And then the idea came to me, maybe there's a place, maybe there's a haven somewhere, a physical place, which is an incarnation of this idea of healing, of inspiration, of recovery, of restoration. Maybe there's somewhere I could be inviting actors and artists and dancers and singers and troubled creative souls like myself. It was a kind of payback time because I felt I'd been helped, financially and emotionally and in many ways spiritually too, by lots of different people. And I was still out there, I was still doing it. I was in my early 40s. And I began to think about the north of Scotland because I knew the north of Scotland very well and I travelled a lot there. It had been a place of huge inspiration for me as a teenager and as a student and beyond. And, I started casually looking through magazines, and over a period of time, I then saw this place, a photograph of a property in country life, and it was Freswick Castle. And I thought, I have to see this place. It's on a beach. It's on an amazing location. And yeah, it's a kind of tower house. Great symbol, really. Wonderful potential. I knew it would need absolutely everything doing to it. It would be crazy. But I still got on the night train and came up, hired a car and saw this place on a cold February day, saw the beauty of the site, the walled garden, looked down into the bay. There was the tower, there was the castle, Freswick Castle. There was the walled garden totally overgrown. There was the burn, the river running round the castle into the sea, turning the waves golden with the peaty water, the amazing kind of rusty-coloured water. I thought, I can't believe this. I'll never see anywhere quite like this again. This is before I even got into the building. I wasn't shown around by anyone. I just was given keys by the farmer at the top of the lane, and I went round, and everywhere I went, and it was just dereliction. Most people would have run a mile. But I thought, oh, this could be a library. Wow, look at this. I look down in the bowels, the medieval part of the castle. This could be a chapel here. Everywhere I went, classic artist, isn't it? Using his imagination, probably totally fanciful. But the whole place was being renovated before my eyes. And yet I didn't really have the money or anything. So that's a long story, how it became possible. But the root of it was this love of artists, not just the arts, but of the people who produce the arts. And I went for it. I took the risk. I once heard an entrepreneur, one of the great founders of innocent smoothies say, and it really affected me. This was years after this, actually, but he said, in terms of being the secret of an entrepreneur, he said, if you're only 50% sure, don't do it. But don't wait till you're 95% sure, because you never will be. Don't wait till you're 100% sure, because that's completely perfectionist, unrealistic. That's just putting it off. If you're 70% sure, do it. And I think that's incredibly good advice, by the way, about human relationships, about love relationships, because every marriage is a beautiful compromise, you know. If you're a perfectionist, you won't make up your mind. And it's the same with risks. And Freswick Castle was a classic 70% decision. You know, I really wanted to do it. I believed I could do it. I wasn't totally sure, but I did it. And everything followed on from there. And over the last 30 years, this has become a place of peace and healing, restoration. And many people have found new courage to keep going. Courage in the French, literally take heart. From the word for heart in French, courage, take heart, keep going. And the castle with its wonderful firesides and its beach, you can walk on the beach just within 2 minutes of the castle, just walk through the gardens onto the beach. And the bird life is incredible. The night sky is utterly unpolluted. It's crystal clear in the winter. Sometimes you see the northern lights. Your soul is lifted up by this place. So I guess the dream I had has been fulfilled and is still being fulfilled. Freswick Castle is a place of not just literal restoration, and there's a lot more still to be done, but the restoration of souls. And I go back to Psalm 23. He restores my soul. So here were people coming of all ages, from young children to very old people, but many people from many walks of life have come here, and their experience has been that their soul has been restored.